some of you, this even happened when I was little. But everyone must know the iconic song Peace Train by Cat Stevens. That, it's in 1971. So when you think about it, it's 51 years ago, right? That's a long time. And so Cat Stevens, of course, that if you don't know Cat Stevens' music directly, you probably should. I mean, most of you probably do know it. But he's an incredible songwriter. His voice is like kind of deep and a little bit shadowy, and like a little bit sad, maybe. But have you ever heard, and I like his version of Peace Train the best, but have you ever heard 10,000 Maniacs, their version of Peace Train? You should Google that, because the song is sung, it's almost exactly the same, but it's sung from an upbeat point of view, right? So it's a little bit more like sunshine than like moonlight. So Cat Stevens is really good at creating songs that feel like moonlight a little bit, but deep and melodic and all those things. And she sings it a little bit more upbeat, like it's a celebration. And like, that's an interesting thing. Like, so the sensation of peace, right? It's something the wonder of Spotify is it came on my list this morning. So I heard Peace Train by 10,000 Maniacs.
You mean Moon Shadow, not Moon.
Yeah.
Not Moonlight, Moon Shadow.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So that is the song. So, but like the idea of Peace Train, there's a hopefulness to it that doesn't have to feel heavy, right? Because obviously peace is a hard thing. And one of the things that I think is part of what I like the contrast between the two versions is that typically, without knowing it, we tend to think of peace as the absence of chaos, or like the absence of violence, right? Like somehow it's a stillness that would have to be peaceful. Clearly, that's not really possible. That might happen. Maybe we'll be at peace when we all die. I have no idea. When we enter the utter ceasing, but it's like, what's the sensation of peace and how do you activate it? And that's got me thinking. And there are so many great lines in that song, but one of them is, out on the edge of darkness, there lies the peace train, right? Which is exactly why the mind struggles so much to have peace. Because in order to go into the sensation of peace, it feels to the mind like darkness, like vulnerability, like don't trust, like all the things that the mind starts doing where there isn't the ability to have control, right? And so one of the things that I think your asana practice is revealing is how to, if you haven't figured it out, especially in this class and as an adaptive yoga student, we all are, even more so than traditional students, having to go into this place that to find the relief of yoga that doesn't quite, it's less known. That's why my words are always so bizarre, because I'm trying to describe things that are on the edge of darkness. But of course, it's not really dark, right? So sit up straight and tall. So the idea of activating the underlying sensation. So the idea of peace isn't just stillness. Right? Ever notice, like in social justice movements, or let's say civil rights movement, I don't like social justice word as well, but like often celebrations like that also have people dancing. Like they're celebrating, they're clapping, they're moving, there's songs related to it. There's something about, so already when you feel like the celebration of peace as something to dance about, you're trying to bring rhythm into a sensation that isn't just ceasing. So there's a big difference between a peace between two countries and a ceasefire, right? And I don't think we make that distinction really well, right? So as you sit up straight and tall, and you start to like create structure, right? Because, for the last year, I've been talking about how prana rewards structure. So you get forward on your sitting bones. So you're a little bit more felt in. So at least I have to do that in order to find my heels a little bit. I need to get on the front edge. But one of the consequences of that structure is that the relationship between my thigh bones and my abdomen dulls a little bit. It gets covered up. So I'm going to activate. So I'm hitting down with my sitting bones, lifting my very low abdomen up and letting my chest catch the wave, right? And then release for a second. And so the idea that, or the exploration into how do you make the coordination between efforts peaceful, right? Because there is the action, the down and the up. And remember, my mind, unfortunately, has to experience things in time. So the instructions are linear, they seem. But the transitions between hitting down, rising up, lifting the chest, and then release. Try to like think about those sensations as peaceful, even more than what you already do. Remember, peaceful doesn't mean the opposite of violent or effortless, right? Effort and peace have to go together. Peace is earned, actually. So again, you're trying to get this beginning activation to be not just dominated by Shavasana, right? But activated, but maintained. So we go to soften the jaw, the inside of the mouth. So you start letting go of the organs of perception, but you're thinking about that first, or trying to experience that first bunch of activation as continuous with what preceded it, the emptiness. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. If you want to, bring your hands into prayer, right? Because you can add symmetry. The only way I can do this is if I lean on the table to stay balanced, because once I go off balance, my mind starts to become less peaceful, right? It starts to try to correct and fix. So balance and peace are integrally related. So if you are putting your hands together, you're hitting down, you're rising up, you're broadening, increase your effort. The pressure between your hands, or however your hands are, or on your legs if they're on your lap. Remember, peace is not absence. Let go of your day and prepare your mind to do yoga. Good, and then release. Bring your hands down to your thighs, palms up, or like just lift the sternum, drop the chin. In other words, increase your outer boundary, right? While falling inward. So your outer boundary increases with the lifted sternum. Your chin drops and you dive into your own pool of activation. And there's a balance here, right? But you're still gliding through your own activation. So the rise, the drop, not in competition, Good. And then raise your head up with closed eyes. Open your eyes. So not to brag, but sometimes you gotta like, I want to clip, or those of you, us on this call that are paralyzed and don't have as much sensation, we have a certain advantage over you, other people, right? I'm calling you, and I don't know if I'm the only one. There are a couple, there are other people, right? And part of it is that, and the reason why I think I have an advantage, or people paralyzed have an advantage, when I go and say, like squeeze your arm, or whatever you can, put reference on your arm, if you can feel your arm. And so that's good, right? I can feel that, but I more feel that on my skin and my muscles, right? So it's like, so when I squeeze there, and then if I go to my wrist and I get more bone in there, the sensation changes, right? There's a depth in there. There's like a still pool that's in the center of the joint that I'm giving reference to. But when I squeeze here, right, I can't, it's hard for me not to feel the contact on my skin, right? So I don't find the inward part as well as when I go here, right? And it's like, so I gotta do it on both sides, because of course, that's one of the disciplines you want to learn as a yogi, is to make sure you're doing things on both sides, right? Because symmetry reveals, right? It reveals the structure between, or the dimension between. So I'm like feeling the pull, and they all feel good, because damn, my muscles need relief, right? But then I go here and it's a little bit different. But still, there's such an outer body. Remember, our senses tend to project outward, I mean, right? They kind of go out into the world, right? And then receive the world, right? But it's on the outside of us, right? And the thing about bones is that they're more inward. So the thing about getting back to the bragging that I wanted to do, right, is that when I put reference on my legs that I can't feel the outside of them as much, I feel energy that I think is more bone energy. So I can access, remember, your bones are traveling through your midline on every appendage, on everything, right? They tend to go through the center. You don't, unless you break them, they don't tend to be too far off center, right? Because that would be a mistake, right? So put your hands on your knees and see if you can make a sensation. So the problem for you, quote, able-bodied, non-spinal cord injured, unparalyzed people is that when you push on your own thighs, you feel and have all the extra input of your skin and muscles, right? I don't, right? But that just means that you have to train your mind differently to not get over attached to the feeling of your hands pushing in your knees, right? Because the delivery is through the bones more. The control is more on the muscles, tendons, and ligaments. So just play. So let your legs go wide and then push them and start changing. So notice that changes the way you're on your sitting bones, right? So when I bring my knees together, there's a slight change in my base, which gets me a certain level of sensation. And then when I go apart, something drops, right? So what's the activating energy, right? And how do I take advantage of it? So if I just go back and forth with my legs out wide, that's cool, right? If I want to find the inner dimension, I'm going to make sure the prana stays lined up in my bones, and then I'm going to go back and forth, right? So my midline is traveling right through my midline, right? And I've got sensation, right, to go back and forth. Remember, we're thinking about activating, life affirming on the edge of darkness. So on the edge of darkness, there lies the peace train. So now lift your chest. Don't get so caught up in what's outside. Think about the place that's moving and connecting, or feel into the place that's moving and connecting into the world around you. Right? And it's like, wait, that's just my imagination. No, it's not your imagination, right? It's actually part of your potential, right? I gotta believe human beings do have potential for peace, although basically it's been an utter human failure for 70,000 years, right? And so lift up again, and you're like thinking, how did I activate this? So now I'm going back and forth. I'm like beginning to accentuate, right? Because exactly where you think it's the edge of darkness, your body's already been there. It actually is a manifestation of it. So I'm kind of like a convex concaving of my spine, right? And I'm just doing it real slow, right? And I take my chin a little bit back, but I'm just falling back and sliding through as I lift my chest, right? So it's a migration of the back part of the spine, upper thoracic forward, but there's a sliding. So as my spine starts to light up the midline for my brain, I'm moving back and forth. So yeah, up and back. I've never understood why this is called cat cow, to be honest. I'm not sure which one would be the cat, which one would be the cow. I don't freaking get it, right? But whatever, I'm good with it, right? So now I want to add more of me into that little movement that probably didn't even show on the camera, but by lifting up and letting my spine elongate and hang, a different energy starts to appear that, let's just for metaphorical reasons and literal reasons say, that's on the edge of what you know. And as you fall back through gravity, that's where you hang out. Remember, darkness doesn't just always have to be judged. What's unknown. So there's potential in your spine for your body, right? That we're trying to wake up. So I'm trying to elongate my spine ultimately so we can do more things with the legs here in this class with the subtle body sensation. So I'm just doing that. And then I'm going to, as I sit back down, I realize how much I fall into a hole when I sit. But now with that extra sense of elongation in my spine, I'm going to start concaving and convexing my spine again. Right? So I'm like, but I'm trying to bring that lightness, or not forget the lightness that came from elongating my spine. So when I'm just trying to get it lighter, I like lifting up and letting my spine hang. You can also elongate your spine by coming forward, but they're very different, right? And so in this beginning one, I'm just wanting this space, like it matters, like that little compression that you have, you want to like have an imprint of it longer and keep convexing and concaving. Remember, we're trying to activate on the edge, let the energy in that our mind keeps on the edge, right? Because maybe there's a way to activate that energy, right? So you're going back and forth, right? And then release. And so now put your hands on your legs, right? And I'm putting my heel of my hands, right? I mean, it's funny. I mean, you know, one of the things I always like let this line keep rattling through my head for the last 31 years or whatever. That's what I heard, is that apparently there's some writing by Mahatma Gandhi that he only mastered two things. Well, three things: truth, non-violence. Those are the two yamas that his whole practice derived from: truth and non-violence. But he said to get there, he had to overcome his fear of death. But don't think about death so literally. Think about it as the ceasing that's in your mind-body relationship that your mind's a little bit afraid of, right? And you don't always have to physically die to realize this energy, right? So Shavasana is part of, that's why it's called corpse pose, right? It's trying you to connect with an energy that your mind doesn't know, doesn't trust to have, right? So my hands are out in front, and now I'm beginning to convex and concave, but now I've got extra reference, right, on my knees. So this activation starts to include my legs even more, right? And so I'm going back and forth, right? Activating. And if you really want to, if you think about yoga poses just as a continuation, right, of an energy, being truthful with the fulfillment of the energy. When I have my hands like this and I concave my back, lift my chest, it actually is really congruent to also spread the center of my palm, right? That it actually, the pose starts to right itself again. So as I do this and activate, I spread my palms, right? And then release. So you may not know this, but we're heading towards both an animal and a mythical animal here, right? So I'm again concaving, spreading my hands, right? In a while, I'm gonna like do more, but now, so I want you to get that this is an expression, whether you can move your fingers or not, right? It's an expression of your spine concaving, concaving, right? So I want you to get that connection. And then make it even, and then I'm going back. And I'm spreading out through my fingers if you can, right? I'm going back and forth. Now I'm trying to find a rhythm to it. So I'm going back and forth. Good, and then release. So on this last one, if you were to really be weird, right? Which is the yogis get weird sometimes. You can do the same thing. You're gonna spread, you're gonna convex, arch your back, spread your fingers, activate your arms, go down through your legs, right? And then I want you to open your mouth and explode your tongue, like just, so like activate, connecting this widening to your palms, and make sure your upper arms are hitting together, right? So your palms, your spine, and now your mouth and your tongue are all in the pose. And then release. I'm just gonna feel that for a second, because once I include my mouth, I don't know about you, but it feels different again. I have to take that one in. Like I'm not used to letting my mouth, where I think I have human control, I'm not used to letting my tongue be an expression of my spine. Typically my speech happens over and on top of my spine. It comes out, but I'm not, right? But when you watch like a performer, they're really good at letting their voice be part of their body, right? As an expression of their spine. So again, here we're gonna do it again. You're gonna go right up, concave, you're hitting down, you're spreading your palms, taking the head back a little bit. Now, I'm gonna make sure my eyes open. I wanna close my eyes when I have my tongue come out. And so it's hard to talk and stick out your tongue, by the way. So I wanna practice both. So I'm gonna do it again. So I wanna do it these, so I don't wanna talk this last time, right? So at first, when I started including my tongue as part of my spine, my eyes wanna close. I don't know about you. But then, because I'm trying to bring peace and activation back, do it, let your eyes be closed and then let them open in the same way. So your eyelids are actually opening like your palm and your mouth, right? So ground, activate, concave your back. And then when you're ready to let it all in, open your eyes. Good, and then release. One more time on your own. I don't know about you, it's funny, because when my tongue is activated, is anyone having a harder time breathing? Okay, I end up not being able to breathe as well, which is fine. A lot of the depth is in retention. But I don't know about you, but don't you kind of get why they built the Sphinx? And that shape, right? Hands out, roaring, right? Kind of makes sense, those old ancient people, right? All right, so sit up straight and tall. So now after all those back bends, we want to twist. So inhale up, exhale, revolve. So this is like the filler to make sure I don't get over active in my low back. So I'm twisting it out. So I just did all that kind of extra tight work. And so I'm like making sure that this twist isn't a grind, it's an expression. It comes up through my spine, through my chest. Get it all the way even through your mouth, right? And then back. Remember, perhaps what makes us uniquely human is our mastery of what comes out the top of our spine. In other words, our speech, right? Something really funky happened when we realized how to make sounds out of our mouth and control them, right? So I'm just trying to undo some of the stuff in my back. I'm lifting my chest, and whether you stick your tongue out or not, it's up to you. But like, I wanted to get it to my mouth, right? Good, and then come back to center. Does anyone on the call clench their jaw during the day? I know it's everybody, by the way, but do you do it at night too, right? And all those things. Just for a second, like, this is like, consider, think about your mind as a swimmer through the depths of existence. And when the mind is squeezing the jaw, clenching the teeth, it's separating itself from the body, right? So squeeze down on your, and then contrast that sensation. I'm loaded, right? Right, to a lifted chest and an open mouth. And then drop your chest. So when you're sleeping, you're hanging out and grinding your teeth. You're hanging out here, right? You're not including the softness at the top of the spine. All right, so now back to the cat-cow that I don't understand why it's cat-cow. I like cows, I like cats. I don't understand how that's scratching my spine, right? So now this time, I want you to put your hands, right? So we're gonna, and hopefully by opening your mouth like that and moving your tongue, you got different space in your jaw, right? Like, find that. I'm amazed how often by clenching your jaw, you're keeping your speech away from your body, right? That's part of what clenching your jaw is too. So this time you're stretching your arms out, you're concaving, right? But now, I want you to take a breath in drop your shoulder blades, hit down the heel of your hands and your knees, ground your inner heels, and elongate your neck. So what you'll find is that the hitting down of your arms into your knees and the elongating of the neck can become the same action. So breathe. So when you're elongating your neck, you wouldn't want to stick out your tongue. Can you tell that? That would not be the pose. Good, and then release. So this idea of the shoulder blades are hitting down, the neck is elongating, right? As you're concaving your back. All right, so try it again. Don't get bored. Okay, so I'm gonna drop my shoulder blades, spread them, hit down through my sitting bones, down through my feet. Remember the sphinx and the tongue. But he dropped the shoulder blades and elongate the neck. Take a couple of breaths. Good, and then release. Does one arm actually fatigue faster than the other? Does for me. I'm not being symmetrical, right? So I want to rock back and forth. So now this time, I want you to go back in your chair, lean back against the back of your chair. And we're gonna back bend. And instead of the energy going down here by pushing on it, I want you to do the opposite. I want you to put your hands on your thighs, kind of just above the knee, right? Push your legs away, your knees away from the elongating spine. Take your head back. Good, and then release. So there are all these inward connections, right? They're kind of crazy. And the good thing is that the yogis that have come before us have actually left breadcrumbs and different ways of filling out the pose to all levels of the body. So you do it again. You're gonna now work up, in a way, we're doing the same thing as we were here, but now the femur bones are elongated. You're using the back of the chair. Good, and then uncoil like it matters. So when you're tilting your head back, did anyone try to open your mouth and do the same thing with your tongue? It doesn't work very well, right? That doesn't mean it's not the right energy direction, right? It just means that this, when you're tipped over like that, somehow is like clenching your jaw a little bit. Like you can't, it doesn't let the energy, it's like an artificial thing layered on top of the movement. On this next one, so there's this crazy, and this is gonna sound so freaking crazy. Dang it, from Richard Freeman again, right? But I've told you about this before. Like he teaches this inversion class, but like it was connecting his upper palate this way. Okay, but I want you to ground your sitting bones. Feel the space between your sitting bones. From the space between your sitting bones, which then immediately goes down to your heels, but that's, can't instruct everything. Let your your upper palate move away from the space between your sitting bones. Literally try to raise this up. Instead of out, up, but do it from the earth. Do it from the base. Now, thumbs up if that instruction ever makes any sense at all. Can you kind of tell what I'm talking about there? Okay, so let's consider this being more like the sun, right? And this being more like the moon. Okay, it's a more inward action. So on this back bend, that's gonna throw the sun, the sun outward, you're gonna, instead of opening your mouth, you're gonna go from the base of your spine, your heels, base of your spine, through the upper palate to take your head back. Okay? Damn these yogis, man. They start like saying these things and you go like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And then you try it and you go like, wait a minute, something's happening here. Out on the edge of darkness, there was more potential, right? So here I'm gonna like start to go back. I'm pushing my legs away, elongating, going up and over. And right here, before I take my head off my back, I start moving from the top of my palate, connected to my sits bones, connected to my feet. And the upper palate makes my eyes go up towards the top of my head. Good. And then release, come forward. So that extra line I added in there, right? That once the upper palate starts moving, that's when the eyes go towards the top of the head in the back bend. When Richard Freeman showed me that, and then I figured out that the upper palate was connected to my sitting bones, right? He said to me, for those of you that have done more yoga, that this is one of the keys to Uddiyana Bandha, right? Which I'm still trying to figure out what the hell all that means. So if you don't have any idea what I just said, don't worry about it. All right, so we're gonna do it again. But now, all of a sudden, I'm moving backwards and forwards and including my upper palate. So rock back and forth, but center your upper palate, right? Like, wait, I almost never freaking include my mouth in my poses. Like, what the hell? Other than whether I clench it or don't clench it, I'm not moving the top of my spine with the bottom of my spine because my brain is so about language now, right? So I'm moving. And wait, now I'm gonna get, like, I'm pretending I'm getting pulled, like I got my thumb on the top of my palate. I'm pulling me forward. The first time I do it, my head goes, but now I want to stay in sync with the center of my chest and move this and top of my palate. And on this next one, I want to go from the base of my spine to the center of my chest through the top of my palate. Like my whole spine is being part of the action. So the softening of the palate in a yoga pose is utilizing Shavasana, right? It's really smart. But what if peace can be activated and it isn't just a ceasing? So in some of the poses, you want the inside of your mouth to be not active, but part of what's happening, not just Shavasana, not just keeping the tongue in the lower palate. You want to have your spine, top of your spine, bottom of your spine, linch point, bridge point, center of the bridge here. You want them moving all together, right? So again, I want you to come forward from, include your palate, the center of your chest, the space between your sitting bones, and of course your heels. But I'm just like, wait a minute. I never move with my palate. I don't want my palate to lead. I want it to participate back and forth. Right? Now sit for a second and contrast that with opening your mouth and sitting out your tongue. Completely different energy, right? And then back. I don't want to do that too hard because I'm more on the moon energy at the top of the palate, right? So now I'm moving it with my spine, making more of me happen. Now I'm going to do this action and ground my legs because I want my bones to be part of this, not just my effort, right? I have to go inward to find my bones, right? So I'm moving back and forth like this. Okay, here it comes. Back bend again, up, over, everything traveling through the inner palate, upper palate, and then my eyes. Good, and then release. I'm moving around because I feel like I got a little too focused, right? Put myself into it slightly too small of a room. So I'm moving around a little bit. So I'm making sure I don't get so in a small room in this action with the palate. So I'm just like making sure to like keep spacious, right? So again, now I want to balance my sitting bone in my chest and my upper palate. I want to go up from my upper palate. Almost makes me want to raise my eyes up into my head, right? But I'm going to stay focused and let my eyes go up, even though my eyes are forward. Moving from the upper palate. I'm doing it all. And I'm going to breathe into each lung. I'm not just using Shavasana to feel the edge of darkness. I'm using activation. Setting the conditions for all of it to come through me. So, and then release. So that grounding energy, as you're finding the top of the palate, right? You're opening your chest. You're doing this. So I'm doing it again. So I'm sitting here like trying to find it all. And I'm making it mine. So, and then release. So you got to know that Hatha is a word that combines sun and moon. So am I just dropping people off, I guess? Thought this was a good class. I'm having fun. So if you're not having fun, that's too bad, right? So the sun and the moon's supposed to yoke together, right? It's not like you're just supposed to do the moon or just supposed to do the sun, right? So like, as you're sitting and we're about to do a back bend again. So as I get the grounding in my upper palate and I'm dropping, one time my yoga teacher said to me, Matt, are you including your scalp in poses? Well, she actually didn't say that. I said, Matt, you're not including your scalp. That's how she said it to me. When I find the upper palate, and I got to also do all that inward and be out. To me, it's similar to opening from the center of the palm. I've got to like keep the inner palate and let my scalp go into the room, be in the room. So you got the inside edge of the mouth and the skin of your palate at the same time. It's never just one or the other in a yoga pose. So we're exploring this. How do you activate on the edge of darkness, right? Okay, so we're gonna do one more back bend for right now, right? We're gonna do this one. Lead from the sitting bone, center, chest, center, palate. Let the palate lead my eyes up, but reach out the fingertips of my scalp as I stay connected to my feet. Good, and then release. Because all the focus on the inner palate, on the upper palate, grinds you too close to the core of the pose, right? For me at least. So I'm moving again. Right, so I'm just using all this language to articulate subtle distinctions, right? And then find center and go right into the back bend. And then come out. And then come forward, right? And concave. And now you know that the sitting bones, the chest, and the upper palate, and the opening of the mouth. And then release. Go back. Inhale. Take your right arm up or left arm up. Exhale. Revolve. Know where you've been. You've been in the top and bottom of your spine in a way you're not used to. And turn. Open the space between the shoulder blades. Let the sitting bones and the top of the palate talk to each other. Hit down and let your scalp go in every direction. Reach with your scalp and your sitting bones, and then come on back to center. Be in the center. What? Reach with your scalp and your sits bones? Right? What does that even mean? I don't know. Freaking do it. Right? Do it. Utilize your nervous system. Good, and then come on back to center. One of the things that I don't know about you, and I think this might be why bandhas were realized in sitting postures where their spine wasn't as dynamic. When I go from the bottom up through, right? Yeah, of course you got to go the other way too, but that's for an inversion, right? Right. So, but when I do this, I'm so in the midline, I have a hard time thinking about extending my limbs. When I include my upper palate, I'm so having to be in this line, right? Of course, you need to be in the midline and with an expansive arm and leg position. So take your legs wide. So I'm making sure that as I go down with my sitting bones, and this already might have been happening in yoga poses before today, down with your sit bones actually travels up to the upper palate, right? And you might not have been aware of it, right? So I'm going down and up, and now I'm broadening between my shoulder blades. I'm broadening out across my sacrum. Each effort is trying to find the tips of my knees and then down to my heels. So this core energy is trying to express, right? But I'm not adding my arms, because once I do that, I'll go off balance, right? So I'm trying to make sure this midline is reaching into the world, right? Without having all my appendage, my arms move. Good, and then release. And so now I take my arms wide, and I can't, whoops, sorry about that. That's gonna be spam on my phone. So I'm glad it's not Shavasana right now. I'm gonna talk right through this thing, right? And so where do I have to go to keep the midline, right? The sitting bone to the inner palate, out through my limbs, out through my knees, down to my heels, out through my arms. Good, and then release. I can already tell, I'm gonna bring my legs together quick for a second, because when I do that, I compress in my spine. So I'm gonna find that energy again in my low back. I'm gonna take my legs wide again. How am I gonna stay focused? By keeping my sitting bones and top of my palate connected as I'm moving. Taking my arms wide. What if focus has nothing to do with effort? Good, and then release back down. So now I'm going to go over right? That maybe there's a focus, right? So I'm lifting my chest. You've done this a lot with me, right? But now I've got more instruction to travel through my midline, including my head, my upper palate, moving my skin from my scalp. Now my arm is just an expression of the energy, like the palms, like the tongue, like the mouth, right? But I'm not losing the midline. Good, and then come on back to center. Be in the center. By the way, for those of you that talked about and came to the yoga disability and transformation, I thought the conversation was quite good, right? Go over to the side, because it's all about the midline, right? So to feel from the sitting bones to the top of my palate allows me to feel through this midline, the center of my arms and legs. In other words, it connects me to my bones. Then I express outwardly into the world, including my scalp, right? And I'm making it all happen. Good, and then release. And then bring your legs together. So in incredibly gentle ways, I'm putting my hands on my thighs. I'm just gonna revisit the concaving and the convexing, but real nice like, right? Because the rhythm, the uplift was always part of the emptiness. Activating peace, right? Good, and then sit in the center and practice symmetry, each foot, hands on each knee, each sitting bone, tip of each shoulder, feeling the midline. It's always funny when protests themselves get violent. So you're sitting at attention. You're feeling the points of your compass, your feet, your sitting bones, the tips of your shoulders. Then you're making the connection through the top of the palate, the sitting bones and the top of the palate, right? Now, as you sit here, let your face, the skin on your face melt, deflate. Keep your chest lifted, but let there be a deflation. Not just on the skin on your face anymore, but in the settling of gravity. Feel your chair, make it support. And then prepare for Shavasana. So however you do that, you've already started Shavasana. There's a hope in the Shavasana. Let it be. Obviously, all the things you know. Soften your jaw, the temples, the inside of the mouth. Good. And then start to bring yourself back. Slightly deeper inhalation, slightly longer exhalation. Come back with a slight smile on your face. What the hell? It actually takes less energy than a frown. Your smile gets to be an expression of your spine, not necessarily a judgment on the world, right? Right? Maybe you smile to keep your spine lighter. Right? You don't smile just because something external made you happy. Right? It's like, no, actually. Right? My smile can be both inward and outwardly if it includes my upper palate. Right? All right. Hands together if you can. Namaste. Spirit in me bows the spirit in you.